You know, from time to time, I've been called a lean, mean grilling machine myself. Ooh, yeah, I got the jokes. Make sure to give me that affirmation button. And I'm John Stark from BackToTheMovieGuy.com. We're going to talk about Big George Foreman. I'm not saying that whole title. I really don't care. The title is unnecessary. The title just screams like, look at me, I'm a film, look at me. It's just Big George Foreman, it's fine. We don't need that other stuff. This is directed by George Tillman Jr., who you may have seen his previous works. He's been pretty good. Soul Food, perhaps, anybody? How about Men of Honor? How about Notorious? The Hate You Give? Those are just some of his previous works. It's on Netflix, and it does have audio description. It has audio description by a company that threw me off totally when it said its name. I wasn't even ready for it. And then I couldn't go back and like rewind because of where the Netflix, you know, like coming up on Netflix, media something. I didn't get the writer's name. I did get the narrator. She was fantastic. I just didn't memorize it for this video because, again, it was like the first time. It was like the first time of everything for those people. I was like, what company? Who wrote this? What? Who is the narrator? Like, just like, geez, there's another company? And it's not Media Access Group, which I'm used to hearing all the time, but like Media Solutions or something like that. Anyway, yeah, let's talk about the film first. So, in case you couldn't surmise, it's a biopic about George Foreman. I know that there are some people on YouTube who, like, they go on and they read, like, the IMDb plot summary for you. Which is always funny, because I see, like, somebody reading some, like, droll thing that doesn't really describe the film. It's like, dude, you just watched the film. Could you not come up with a plot summary for the film yourself? God, it's a biopic about George Foreman. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, he starts out as a kid and works his way all the way up through the end, you know, to the, I don't know, like, at least past the point of making George Foreman grills and becoming the oldest person to win the heavyweight title. That's kind of where we stop, I would say. None of this should be spoilers, by the way, because, again, it's a biopic. So the only reason this would be a spoiler is if you just, I don't know, didn't watch the news. Like, then I guess everything's a spoiler to you. You're like, what? What is this Watergate stuff? You know? People around you are looking at you like, seriously? I don't know where to start. Anyway. Yeah, so that's what this is. It's a biopic about George Foreman. And it stars basically nobody. I don't want to disrespect these people because actually the acting is fine. The only reason, the only thing that I would question is if you're going to choose somebody without any star power to lead this film, I really hope they authentically looked like George Foreman. But I don't know because I can't see. That's not a thing I can comment on as a blind film critic. That I'm able to be like, yes, uncanny. It's like they're twins. So I believe Chris Davis is the lead here. I got nothing. It's fine. I didn't hate his performance. Especially considering everything else that's wrong with this movie. He's not the problem. And neither are any of the other sort of like unknown actors. We do get a couple people in here that you've heard of before. John Magaro is really, I mean, he really pops. Like, the first time he spoke, I was just like, oh my God, please keep this guy in the movie. And they did. They found a really weird way to keep him in the film, too. I was like, man, this guy's still in the film, okay. I didn't realize this was going to be like a lifelong friendship, but cool. Yeah, John Magaro, who might get an Oscar nomination this year for Past Lives, plays, you know, the most authentically New York person you could possibly find for a film. I'll just say that. That's probably, you know, you feel like he fell out of like the Newsies cast or something. Yeah, he's ready to be in. He's ready to be in any upcoming mafia picks that you need him to be in. And the big anchor here is Forrest Whitaker. Forrest Whitaker plays Doc, who's like the mentor to George Foreman. And I couldn't help but think, what would this film have been like if Forrest Whitaker had directed it? You know? I don't know what happened here. This film, in many ways, feels like it was directed, and then it didn't have like a home, and maybe Tillman took it around and was like, "Hey, will you release my film?" And then finally it came around to Sony, and they were like, "No, but we'll have you talk to Affirm Films, which is our faith-based division." And the people at Affirm were like, "We like it. Can it have a little bit more Jesus in it?" And so they kind of like lazily interwove some Christian beliefs in here. Like, you know, throughout the film, his wife sort of has like a vision of the future, and you know, like, God spoke to me about you know, like that kind of thing. It's just kind of like thrown in, but it's not, the film isn't about that. It's not very heavy-handed. It's not a thing that you would know about this film. It's not like, if this didn't have the Affirm Films logo in front of it, I would never have guessed this was targeted to Christian audiences, faith-based audiences, at all. It just doesn't feel that way. It is kind of a clunkily written and directed film now. Even without that stuff sort of thrown in to sort of appease a certain demographic. It's very just sort of like cause and reaction, like with immediate effect. Like, you're shown something, and then you're shown what happens, and then like what happens, and then what happens. It's not really like a thoughtful meditation on anybody's life. I think like Ali was a much stronger representation of a boxer telling their story and doing it in such a way where you're not really sure where it's going. Here, you can kind of assume where the next scene is going to go, because he's almost pointing with a giant arrow in the next direction. So, as an example of this heavy-handedness, there's a scene towards the beginning where George is going to school, and for some reason he's, I don't know, going to a class with little kids, and he's older. We're actually told in the narration that the kids are younger than him, not just shorter than him or smaller than him, but younger than him. So George has been held back, I guess, a couple of times, and is not living up to the standards of the white education boards of his time. Yes, race plays a huge part in this film, and luckily the narration recognizes that, but I'll get to that when I talk a little bit more about the audio description. But there's a scene where he comes in and he sits down with these tiny kids. I don't know, it's hard to tell because we didn't actually define how far apart they are in age, but the narration just did make a point of saying that these people are young. They sound younger than him. It's possible though that George just hit like a giant growth spurt. You know, I mean, he's a big guy. So, I wouldn't have necessarily guessed that, but I was told that. So I was told to expect something here. Sits down in class. Teacher says, "Who wants to read today?" And George raises his hand. She looks at George. And then there's this other kid. I think his name was like Jacob. And he raises his hand. He's a nice, clean little white boy. With, his shoes are nice and new. And George's shoes are not nice and new. This was actually pointed out to me in the audio description. That this fucking bitch up at the front of the class took the time to look over these wardrobes and make a decision based on who should read, based on what they're wearing. And obviously the differential here between the two people is wide. So you've got a giant black kid that would like to read in your class. He's really excited about it. We're told he like really wants to read. And this other kid, he's also got his hand up. Of course she picks the other kid. You know what the next scene is? George drinking alcohol. Like, literally. I mean, first of all, not only did I get the most, like, heavy-handed, like somebody sat down and was like, we need people to understand racism is real within one scene. And they wrote this scene, and they were like, what is the effect of racism? Alcoholism. It's so heavy-handed, and I know I'm laughing about this as a white folk. I totally get that. But goddamn, there's so many other directors who do this way better. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a little bit of a like weaving in and out and suggestiveness and themes that run through things. And it's just like he doesn't read in class, so what does he do? He goes out and he starts drinking alcohol. Like, of course he does, because what else would he do? And then, it's like the whole, like, oh, you're gonna ruin your life, and, get caught up with the wrong people type thing, and lo and behold, that happens, and then lo and behold, he ends up in military school, and he's like, oh, this is gonna be a fresh start for me, and so we see him out of military school, and this gets incredibly frustrating, because once again, we're at the place, and all the white people are staring at him, and like, just with this disgust and hatred, and like, he steals a bed, and this guy's like, like, how dare you pick that bed? I was gonna pick that bed. And George is like, it's just a bed. Move on. But unfortunately, he can't move on because, that's the film. And George opens up his suitcase, and he finds he's got new shoes from his mom. I don't know why his mom would send him off with new shoes in this time where obviously she, as a black woman, would know racism is a thing. And there are definitely racist assholes in this time period. And that her son has experienced that. And that's half the reason he is where he is because roadblocks have been thrown up in his face. So she sends him off, surprising him with it's like they're literally still in the shoebox. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, brand new. George didn't know they were going to be in there. Bam. First of all, when you pack for something, you usually pack pretty tight. You try to make sure. How do you get an entire shoebox in there in the first place? Like, without somebody noticing? I don't know. I mean, shoebox. Fuck it. Whatever. So, of course, he's looking at these shoes, and everybody else is looking at him, looking at the shoes. So, we know what's going to happen to those fucking shoes. It's exactly what does happen to those. They get stolen. I was shocked. I did not see that coming. And this film goes on like that. This film just does stuff like that all the time. Where it just, it's like, well, I wonder what the next, yep, that's exactly what the next scene will be. Here's this. It's like a cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. The whole film, it is so terribly and awfully directed that I actually noticed how terribly and awfully directed it is. I don't know what happened to George Tillman Jr. because his other films are not like this. They're not so just. I mean, it's like he gave up. It's like he just said, fuck it. And I don't know what to say. Either the script is terrible or George Tillman Jr. is now an awful director. Just god awful. I liked the Hate You Give. I thought The Hate You Give was good. It has a bit of that in it. But it also, unlike Big George Foreman, which I'm assuming is not adapted from a YA novel, The Hate You Give was adapted from a YA novel. So it was aimed at a younger audience, which means, yeah, you got a little bit of explaining to do and a little bit of playing to your audience. You know what I'm saying? Because you're doing things purposefully to have a message oftentimes for YA books. So, like, I was able to forgive it for that. I didn't sit there and analyze it on the same level as, you know, I don't know, like a Spike Lee joint. But I was able to recognize that The Hate You Give was sort of representational for the youth of America, and not necessarily made to sit there and have grown-ass adults sit there and overanalyze it. But this is a biopic. It's a biopic about somebody who I don't think kids give a shit about. So I can't sit here and be like, well, this is made as like a Disney Channel original movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is made for... Which is where sometimes this heavy-handedness comes into play. Because when you get into like the wonderful world of Disney and then you get the big George Foreman, that's not what this is. It's even PG-13, it's not PG. So I find it just a little bit hard to continue to make excuses for any of the decisions made in this film. Forrest Whitaker is fine as Doc, but his character is just poorly written. We're mostly introduced to him when he catches George in the act of retrieving his shoes. I'm going to call it that because that's what it is. It's retrieving. Who cares how he gets it done? Some little bitch decided to steal his shoes and he went and got them back. You know, that's what you get for fucking stealing shoes. Also in a confined space, like a military. Like, what did you think? You think somebody wasn't going to see you with brand new Chuck Taylors on? Like, what? Anyway, so of course the dude runs and he's like, this is like your third, you punched 3 people in the face, and did the door piss you off? Because he had to break down a door to get to this guy because this guy decided to hide. So he broke through a door. He's like, that door is federal property. He's like, what about my property? You know, like, it's kind of like a valid question. And for him to be sort of, I don't know, like, second guessed in this time period by probably the only other black person on screen, like, it's just, like, what are we doing here? You know? I mean, the doc should have come up to George and been like, hey, let's fix this door before somebody notices. Instead, he's like, I gotta kick you out and drive you out personally out of this fucking school. You know? Like, it's just... I don't even think they went and got his shit. I just think they drove him out of the school. I think literally they just get out of that building and they just walk to Doc's car and George is like, I can't go home. And Doc's just like, do you have any money for a train ticket? And they just like leave. There was no mention of them ever going back to get the rest of this crap. It's just like, well, you know, it's the most unsympathetic portrayal of anything ever. It's just, every moment I was watching this film, I wanted to be watching something else. There wasn't really anything good I could say about this film. And the problem is that the acting here really is not bad. This could have been something that took Chris Davis, I think that's his name. I have no idea who he is. Could have taken him to the next level, but it's kind of like with Notorious, which was okay. It didn't do that great at the box office. It didn't really light any careers on fire. So, it feels a little bit like that again. It's like George Tillman once again just let everybody down. And, we just got this instead. Very disappointing. So, because I think George Foreman is a big enough figure in sports who achieved enough, has an interesting story. He just deserved a better biopic. And now this is his biopic, and it will serve as his biopic. And nobody will want to make another one because they'll be like, oh, we made a George Foreman biopic, but nobody will sit there and be like, but it's not any good. It's terrible, actually, in many ways. Yes, I talked about the front of the film, but I mean, like, the heavy-handedness just goes so later into the film. Like, later on, he's overweight, and so we go through that, like, montage, you know, of, Team America reference. Yeah, of, him losing weight, and, like, he weighs a lot. He's, like, over 300 pounds, and so he's doing all this stuff, and, you know, he's, like, pulling a Jeep down the road, and then he goes and he sits down for breakfast. And he's like, I can't wait for some pancakes. I'm really excited about these pancakes. And of course, we got his wife, and she's, you know, she's about to serve him something, and she's giving him side eye. And he's like, man, I've been looking forward to some pancakes. I don't know. He says it like 3 or 4 times about pancakes. I'm like, I get it. He's not going to get pancakes, and that's going to be the joke. Because there are, like, really stupid people who show up to films like this and they don't see that joke coming, and then when he doesn't get handed pancakes, he gets handed something else healthier. Like, they're like, ha, I get it. He didn't get the pancakes. It's so funny. This joke works. Like, no, it doesn't. It really does not. This is one of the worst scripts of the year. Seriously, of the year. It's such a terrible film. Yeah, and the odd thing is, it has an excellent audio description. The only flaw in this audio description, I would say, is that it is a film about a boxer, and I didn't feel like the boxing sequences really mattered. I didn't feel like anybody took detail to try to bring us in. But then again, I don't think the film really doesn't do like what Creed does, where every single boxing scene is this massive set piece. Like, there's fighting in it, but it doesn't want to spend too much time. I don't think they really spent a whole lot of time training the actors in this film to be able to make these fights look as real as perhaps maybe earlier in the year Creed 3 did. So, maybe that's why. But in the meantime, I mean, it would be nice to know who's throwing which punch, who's getting hit, you know, that kind of thing. There's literally, I remember at least the final fight is basically just not described. I mean, basically it's just like happening, and you get, you know, you get to hear like the announcers kind of talking about it, but they're kind of talking about how impressive it is that this old guy is boxing. They're definitely not giving you like the play-by-play. So it's just kind of like there's a fight happening. We're all acknowledging that it's happening. I guess we know because of history how this ends. So why bother? Is maybe that's how I got, but everything else is fantastic. The film does make note of all the racial differences, which is, you know, important to the film because this film makes race front and center in this film. So you always kind of have to know who is white and who is black in this film. And that is something that is pretty consistently always brought to the forefront is who are these people? What do they look like? Is this a safe situation? Is this not a safe situation? Is this situation going to likely work out for George? Is it not? Because aside from basically John Magaro, almost all the white people in this film suck. Just like across the board. But we got John Magaro, so that's cool. That's somebody. And the film did do a really good job of pointing things out. Like I said, that first scene with the shoes. I mean, it literally told me what the teacher was looking at and analyzing. And I could kind of imagine that this film, based on how it's written, probably actually had the camera zoom in on George's ratty shoes and zoom in on the other kids' new shoes. And then had her go, Jacob, I choose you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really think that was probably the case. That it really was, because it feels like the writing here is so heavy-handed. I would imagine the directing was probably heavy-handed too. So I could see that level of detail being brought to the thing. Also, I did like the fact that instead of just saying a new pair of shoes, we got the actual Chuck Taylors, so that people know this is real deal here. These are, you know, this is like Air Jordan before Air Jordan. This is the thing. These were the kicks back in the day. This is some cool shit right here. Yeah, so that was the specificity with the shoes was appreciated. It's just stuff like that. Like throughout the film, it's just all the way up through the end. I loved the use of, I should say, that pancake scene that he served porridge, which is hilarious because I know he was probably served like oatmeal or grits or something like that, more American, but it's just the narration for this obviously was imported. I could tell the narrator has an accent. I was assuming it was UK audio description anyway, but yeah, porridge just really hits because there isn't really a good way to say porridge, you know? I feel like every time we hear the word porridge, we're just like, I'm sure even people who like porridge are like, can they have a new word? Can we come up with it? That we did. It's called oatmeal, you know? No, it's porridge. Because, you know, at that point, he probably had enough money to have legitimate, at least, you know, to get some of that Quaker oatmeal up in there. But, nope. Nope, he has porridge in front of him instead of pancakes. Still got a P in front of it, but that's it. Anyway, yeah, I thought the audio description here was really nice. From a company I'd never heard of, a writer I'd never heard of, and a narrator I'd never heard of. I thought it was always taking advantage of the ability to try to engage and tell us in something, to continue to flesh out the film. It talks as frequently and as often as humanly possible, which is really good. It's always trying to world build and bring us into the film and let us know what's happening and describe to the best of its ability anything that's happening on screen. It's just audio description for a really awful movie that deserved to be so much better. I don't know what happened to this film, and I don't really have answers. All I have is a grade. I'm gonna give Big George Foreman a D. Again, I don't have a problem with the actors. That's why this is at a D and not like a D- or an F. I don't think I had a single problem with acting in this film. I do hope that if you're, like I said, I hope Chris looks like George, but if you're going to choose an unknown, and it better be for a good reason. Otherwise, you're just wasting yourself at the box office. Anyway, that's it. That's my review. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I would love to have more followers so that I can continue to talk about audio description to a larger audience. So if you could click that validation button, that'd be great. Both of them, the one with the thumbs up and the one that says subscribe. Both validation buttons would be great. And also, I do have a website, MacTheMovieGuy.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads at MacTheMovieGuy. You can go to the audio description project, adp.acb.org. It'll let you know what has audio description and where you can watch it. And you can go to the adna.org. That's the adna.org. It'll let you know who's narrating your favorite films and television series. That's it for me today. I will review something else and see you guys on the other side.